You may not think it's possible to leverage the GI Bill and a few veteran scholarships to get a master's degree and two PhDs, but that's exactly what Adam Whisler has done. After serving as an infantry officer in the Army, Adam became a subject matter expert at the military educational benefits so that he could leverage his degrees to achieve his goal of becoming a strength and conditioning coach for the military. He is currently completing his PhD while also working as a coach for the Space Force. As a Tillman Scholar, self taught AI programmer, and all round freak athlete, this episode is a special one. The portion of our conversation covering how he specifically used the GI Bill and approached other scholarships by itself could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to someone listening. Thanks for joining us for this veteran venture. Most people you talk to when transitioning out of the military have never actually transitioned out themselves. You're probably getting a bunch of opinions from people who plan on staying in until retirement and have no idea how to actually show empathy for your situation. This podcast is about providing fresh perspectives and a front row seat for conversations with successful veterans doing big things after leaving the military.
3 days ago, I just did my first 50-mile mountain bike in Leadville, Colorado. So having Leadville 2.5 hours away is a pretty sweet thing to have in your backyard, you know?
No kidding.
Yeah.
Leadville's got, I know it's got the ultra race, like the super
Yep.
famous one, but it also has a pretty famous, was that the famous Leadville mountain race, like mountain bike race? Or
So
was that
it's a qualifier for that event.
okay.
I'm not good enough at mountain biking to qualify for it, but in any other way but the lottery. But yeah, it's called the Silver Rush 50 mountain bike. I say this not to tap my own ego, but people say that the Silver Rush is harder than the Leadville 100 because it's so much harder from a technical terrain standpoint. So it was like far more difficult for climbs. There's, packs more punch per mile, if you will. So like the elevation profile is much more difficult. So it's like 8,000 feet of elevation gain in 50 miles.
That's,
And I think for the entire Leadville 100, it's 11,000 feet of gain over 100 miles. So it's
geez,
a different elevation profile for sure. But
that's brutal.
yeah, it kicked my butt. It was fun.
Are you still sore from it?
It's not nearly as bad. So I've done a lot of ultra marathons as well. It's not nearly as bad as an ultra marathon because the eccentric component going downhill really starts to crush you on an ultra. But you're like sore in a different way, I suppose. Yeah, yeah. I think like my muscles don't hurt that bad. Like I trained hard this morning and it was fine. But you're sore in a different way, I suppose, right? That's the best way to say it. Yeah, I'm
You're
sore,
just a
but
beast.
it's
Just a
not, yeah,
beast.
it's not the same. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I don't get sore if I'm less than 100 miles, man.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Small
it
stuff.
has to be hard enough to like even, be respectable to be sore, right?
So is that something, are you transitioning more towards biking?
I didn't know if I was going to or not. I was like, well, I enjoyed some ultra running and stuff. And I was like, well, I've never done this cycling. And so as for right now, I'm a full-time strength and conditioning coach. And so in my, coaching practice, I still work for the military, but I have a lot of folks who like want to go and do, triathlons or mountain biking stuff or like cycling races and whatnot. And I had so much experience doing a lot of other sports. Like I've competed in a lot of different things. I won the state championship in powerlifting last year. I've been in nationals twice in a row. I've done CrossFit before. I've done like a lot of different competitions, and I get a lot of, coaching experience by doing that because I get to do it as an athlete and I know what they go through. And so then I was like, well, I've never done a cycling race before, so let me go learn a lot more about cycling. And so then that was like the best way for me as a coach to learn is to go be the athlete, right? So I was able to kind of go and learn a lot more about cycling. You start learning about power to weight ratios, you start learning about FTPs, how do you program for cycling, what's the difference between this and running, like how do we track intensity, like all those kind of things that you wouldn't know. And they don't teach you that as like my PhD program. They're not like, hey, this is how, program for cyclists. They don't care about that stuff. So
Well,
yeah,
huge props
it's
to
just
you
a fun
for
way to
going
learn.
out and doing it. I mean, a lot of people teach things or coach things that they may have
Yeah,
not done, super competitively before. And it sounds like you want to put yourself in the first person perspective so you can really empathize with what they're going through, which
for sure.
that says a lot about the type of coach
Yeah.
and person you are.
Yeah. No, I
Um,
appreciate it.
yeah, of course. Also, a huge shout out to our mutual friend Tyler for this connection. I know you guys are both Hoosiers, right? Was that the
Yep, that's
connection you guys
correct.
had?
Yeah, yeah. We
Nice.
both went to Indiana University. We also went to the same high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I've known Tyler since I was like 10. I've known him for 20 years.
Wow, small world,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pleasure.
He was in the same grade as my oldest brother throughout high school. My oldest brother, so Tyler was the quarterback in high school football, and then my oldest brother was his wide receiver, his main, number one wide receiver. So yeah, I've known Tyler literally since I was like seventh grade. I've known him for a very long time.
Nice. Well, Tyler and I have we go back to Bullock days. We tossed football quite a few times, played some flag games, and yeah, he definitely loved to revel in his glory days of playing high school quarterback.
Oh
So
yeah.
I'm glad that it's
Yep.
you're providing some legitimacy
That's
there.
how I
To,
knew him. Yep.
I would always give him a bunch of trash. You weren't the starting quarterback, man. You were probably
Yeah.
like maybe third string or so.
Yeah. Too short
So
to start, of course.
no, he's a great athlete, great person as well. Well, Adam, we'll jump into this conversation a little. I mean, we kind of roll from the very beginning, but the premise being telling the stories of people that have gone through a transition, that have a little bit of time in the civilian sector, getting experience of what kind of their path looks like after serving, and just telling those stories so that people that are going through their transition or considering getting out can have a fresh perspective on what's possible. And so, yeah, we'd love to start off, kind of kick it your way for a little bit more about your background in the Army and then what kind of led to your transition out and how you went about that process.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my military career in 2013 when I enlisted in the Indiana National Guard. So that was coming right out of, I was still 17. I was coming off of basically my final year in high school football season. I went in, I was like, that's all I ever wanted to do was be in the Army. That was my dream. That's all I knew. And that was like dead set. That was what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And so I enlisted in 2013, went through basic training, and then I went and did what's called the simultaneous membership program. So while I was enlisted in the National Guard, I was also in Indiana University's RTC program. So I kind of got to be an enlisted soldier while at the same time also being like a cadet in the RTC program. And so then that led to basically 4 years of doing that stuff. Was pretty involved in my RTC program. That was a fantastic program. Learned a lot there. And then it was great having the experiences of, things like going to airborne school, things like going to basic training and learning what enlisted soldiers kind of have that experience, right? So then I commissioned as an active duty officer in 2017. I went through active duty infantry. I was infantry as enlisted as well. And so commissioned active infantry in 2017 and then did like the standard infantry pipeline through IBOLC, Ranger School, that kind of stuff. I was already airborne qualified. So then got assigned out to Fort Drum. So pretty cold, but it was what it was.
It's not
I'd say
Colorado.
absolutely, yeah, love the unit though. So 10th Mountain was incredible and it was just cold at Fort Drum. So but had the incredible opportunity to basically take a platoon when I first got there, went through JRTC, ramp up to deployment to Afghanistan, got to be a rifle PL and a mortar PL while I was in Afghanistan. So that was a great time. And then basically came out. And then while I was in Afghanistan, I'll talk about this a little more, of course, but while I was in Afghanistan is when I kind of made the choice to separate, right? And because I was prior enlisted, I only had a minimum service commitment of 3 years, which is a little different than most of my peers who in RTC was a 4 year commitment, and then for West Pointers being a 5 year commitment, right? So I only had that 3 year commitment. And so I was kind of eyeballing, man, like what do I want to do with the rest of my life, right? And what does this really look like now that I'm an officer and this career pipeline? Does this really make sense? And does this satisfy like what I actually want to do on a daily basis? Like when I wake up, am I pumped to go fill out some 5988s? Not really. So maybe I should start to consider getting out. So then I was like, all right, well, I came back. I said, well, I'm going to start exploring that process of what it would look like to separate, right? And so I started to reach out to these different agencies for the universities I was interested in going to. And so I was like, well, I should get a master's degree because the only other thing that I wanted to do instead of being in the Army was be a human performance professional for the military. And so that was my only goal is I was like, well, like I don't want to leave the military because it's not just it's not about it's all I knew. Like I'm comfortable doing other things, but it was more like I just love the military community, right? Like I
Yeah,
wanted to continue to serve the military, but
I
it
was
was
gonna
just
ask, how did you know? How did you know that's what you wanted to do? Like, how did you know that you only wanted to do
yeah.
human performance for the military?
Yeah, I think it's, was lucky to be exposed to a lot of different types of athletes throughout my bachelor's degree. I got to see a lot of what other people were doing in the civilian sector and stuff. And it kind of sounds cheesy, but like, just like the values and the types of people who are in the military are just my types of people. There's just a certain personality or core like set of attributes that most people in the military have that I just get along with really well. And I really enjoy being around that type of person, right? So it was more about that kind of stuff. And then being a civilian working for the military, I was like, well, I could actually wake up and do strength and conditioning as my full-time job. And I would go through and I would plan squad competitions or PT competitions. And my final year in the Army, I was preparing, sadly, for the canceled 2020 Best Ranger competition.
I did the
So
same one.
okay, really? Yeah.
Yep.
So I was preparing for that. We were ready to go, and then it gets canceled a month before.
Man,
So
I would have loved to meet you there. That would have been
it would have been a
epic.
lot more fun for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I was TDY training in Fort Polk. We were taking it pretty serious and it, had a lot of fun. But anyways, so that was in the middle of as I was getting out. But and like kind of figuring out that process. But I was like, well, if I could wake up and do fitness every day, that'd be pretty cool, you know? And I could wake up and do fitness every day if I was also a civilian working for the military, and I can still feel like I'm involved in that community. And then I can still have something that like when I wake up, I'm excited to go do these tasks, right? And that was also around the time of when what's called the Holistic Health and Fitness, H2F for the Army. That was whenever that was kind of like starting to roll out. And so during that rollout process, I was like, oh, this is actually like a viable career path. So I went and talked to some of those coaches and I was like, hey, like, what did you do to kind of set yourself up for serving in this role? And they were like, well, you got to have these certifications and you got to have at least a bachelor's, but ideally a master's degree. And I was like, okay, like that's interesting. So then while I was in Afghanistan, I was searching up master's degree programs because I was like, well, I'll be, 3 years active duty, which is the requirement. So 36 months on active duty is a requirement to get the GI Bill, right? So full GI Bill coverage. So after 3 years, I knew I had full GI Bill coverage. And so what I did was, and this is one of the things that I was going to talk about in a bit, is I applied when I was only at 27 months. And it was like, hey, you're, currently qualified for 70% GI Bill coverage. So it was kind of this like pre-approval where I applied 9 months before I'd even qualify for that 100%. But then that made it so that I knew that I was on track for what I expected it to be, right? And like I was confirming like, oh, yes, like this process exists and like I'm gonna be fully covered. So then that helped a lot too, gain my confidence. But yeah, it was more about just kind of as I was transitioning, I was like, I just really wanted to look forward to what I was doing every day. And I don't think I would have had that like desire as a Brigade S3. No offense to Brigade S3s.
Is that
I think
program similar to Ready and Resilient, or is that what it became, or is it somewhat separate?
Are you talking about Ready Resilient being the H2F?
Yeah.
So it's similar, but it's quite a bit larger. So it comprises all human performance, where R2 was more just cognitive and like mental fitness, if you will,
Okay.
and resilience, where it was just mental, like basically cognitive performance specialists, right? And so that's a different style of program. And that was like your MRT, right? H2F is more about, it has mainly strength and conditioning coaches, and then it has quite a few athletic trainers, it has a dietitian, physical therapist, and like a full human performance team. And so then I got to see that human performance team and say, oh, like that would be pretty awesome. Like that's kind of what I want to do is I can still be involved in the military, but like I can do human performance every single day. So that was kind of
Right.
my goal whenever I was getting out. And so that's why, I mean, I already had a bachelor's degree in kinesiology from my RTC days. And then I was like, well, I can walk right into a master's program, be fully funded for tuition from the GI Bill. And then I can go from that master's degree program and then hopefully walk, into positions. But that, yeah, is also more complicated than it sounds, of course. But that was like the overall goal and like what I planned on whenever I was getting out.
have you always been the type that was like super max the PT test kind of guy? It sounds like you were already making competitions. Were you already competing in powerlifting or other? I mean, was it pretty naturally the type of person you were to begin with?
Yeah, definitely. That was, I think I don't think the entire time to my knowledge and memory, I don't think I ever didn't get a perfect 300 on the APFT and then the 600 on the ACFT when it was coming out. So that was always like my thing for sure. And, I did my first ultra marathon back in 2016. I've been competing in powerlifting since 2017. I was on
Those
a
don't
lot of
typically
different
go in
like
the same conversation.
yeah, yeah. So that's kind of the, fun part about what I do with strength and conditioning is I like to blend both, right? And I get to go and compete in both of those things because it's like, yeah, the classic, and that's the, we talked about best ranger for a second. So that's kind of what I enjoyed doing is I was never necessarily the fastest at the 2 mile. I was never the strongest in a powerlifting meet, but I was pretty decent at both and I can put in a lot of work and I can be pretty good at both. And so that was kind of always my goal is like, yeah, let's do both, like that's fitness to me.
Yeah, the best
Absolutely.
Army athlete is truly a Swiss Army knife.
That's for
Right.
sure. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was always the goal. And so, yeah, I mean, I did my first ultra marathon when I was a junior in college. And so that was just one of those things where, I have lucky to have a great family that also did that kind of stuff. I did a lot of races and stuff with my brothers and my mom, and it just is something that we do as a family. And so that was always a great time. And so, it made it really easy to kind of transition and go and do those types of things. But yeah, I mean, it was like always my passion with training for fitness and like being fit. And that was always like what I knew is, again, like I was looking forward to doing that, right? I ran the PT program for whatever company I was in, whatever platoon I was in, whatever agency I was in. I was always that guy like trying to be the like physical training officer, like the PTL, like physical training leader for everybody in that organization. So it was a pretty easy switch for me to flip. And I was also kind of doing that while I was in my bachelor's degree. Like I was coaching people. That was what I got a bachelor's in as well, is in public health and kinesiology. So it was always like it was an easy transition for sure. And I knew that I enjoyed coaching and I knew I enjoyed being an athlete. And it was just like, well, like I can make a career out of that. So let's try that, you know?
For someone who like obviously athletics comes incredibly, naturally to you. I'm not saying it's easy because I'm sure you put a ton of effort and work towards it. But speak to the transitioning service member who it might not be their main focus, but it's still something they want to continue to progress while they get out of the military. What's a small piece of advice for somebody who's transitioning, isn't going to have that PT every day anymore, isn't going to have that camaraderie, that, requirement to get up at 5:30 in the morning and
Right.
get to PT? What would you say to them?
I think my favorite thing to encourage people to do is to just find a date on the calendar where that could be a 5K, that could be a high rocks, that could be a, whatever it is. But by putting a date on the calendar and like forcing yourself to go and do this thing, it's almost if you had that PT test on the calendar. And then I knew, hey, I'm going to take that ACFT or AFT or APFT. It's obviously going through some changes, but I'm going to take that in October of this year. And so I'm going to train toward that test and I'm going to try to do my best on that test. Because whether you like it or not, if you sign up for a 5K in October, like it doesn't have to be ultra marathons or powerlifting or something crazy. Like it can just be I'm going to go and sign up for this local thing. There's a unsanctioned strongman competition next month here in Colorado Springs, and I'll encourage people to go and do something like that. Like, why not? Go put your hat in the ring, have something to train for, because then it's on you to show up and perform. But the only way you'll be able to perform and be proud of yourself is if you put in that daily work. And that's why I do like this stuff like we talked about earlier of I just did a mountain bike race this past weekend and like with that mountain bike race, yeah, did I always want to wake up at 4 a.m. on a Thursday to ride my bike for 2 hours in my garage? No, of course not. That's not fun. I enjoy working out, but there's nothing fun about waking up at 4 in the morning to ride my bike for 2 hours on a stationary bike in indoor garage. That's not a good time, but I want something to train for and I wanted to kind of practice what I preach like as a coach, but whether you're a coach or not, again, it gives you that thing to shoot for. And it's completely up to you whether or not you prepared for it. And then it actually makes you do the thing.
Yeah, it's a great forcing function to have it on the calendar and
100%.
have to go do that thing when the time comes. Moving towards your transition a little bit, you mentioned you've reached out to a number of organizations to help get your foot in the door with what you're doing now. Could you talk to, and maybe this is getting really niche, and so we don't have to dwell here, but what organizations did you leverage to try and get to where you are? Are they more broad organizations that could help people with transition generally, or were they very specifically to get from active duty to a civilian contractor in the physical fitness space?
Right. It was definitely not specific to my career trajectory. So I would definitely say let's say, conceptual approach toward getting out that I took was, yeah, I kind of identified this possible career field I was interested in. And then I said, okay, what are the things that it would take for me to be successful in that career field? Okay, I need to get these certifications. I need to get this degree. I need to talk to people who are doing it. And then I need to set up this like veterans support service. So for me, it was the veteran support service was figuring out what to do about the GI Bill, right? So that was my number one thing is, okay, so let's go and apply for that GI Bill. So GI Bill is fantastic. For anybody who's curious as well, if you have any disability, you can qualify for voc rehab, so like vocational rehabilitation. And so if you have a disability, a service-connected disability that also prevents you from serving in a certain career field, you can qualify for additional education, tuition, training, certifications even. You could get a trade job fully funded from voc rehab. And so I think now it's called VRNE.
Yeah, that saves your GI Bill. Is that kind of the perk to it?
Correct. So it's a separate program as well, where VRNE is separate from the GI Bill, and so you could pull from both if you qualified for it. And so that's a really incredible program. And so, I mean, I highly recommend you just figure out like if you have any desire to go back and get a certification, or if you see this career field that you're interested in going and pursuing, try to figure out the Army Credentialing and Online Learning, the COOL program. That's a fantastic program that people are not fully aware of. Go use that VRNE, go use that GI Bill. And then all of those agencies, if you were, let's say, interested in a university, whatever university it is, almost every large university will have a veterans department. And so in that veterans department, you'll also be able to reach out to that veterans department and say, here's my current situation in the military. Here's where I see myself going. I'm considering going to your university. You could even not even consider going to their university, but you could just reach out to any veterans university, veterans department in a university, and I bet they would reply and have no problem having a conversation. So like for me, wanted to have, let's say, two options to go to school for. So I applied to two separate master's programs. So, but I was talking to both veterans departments at both universities, and they were giving me separate piece of advice from people who have been doing this for maybe 10, 20, 30 years. And so I got to learn so much from that process of, okay, here are the steps that are required for me to be successful. And then let's reach out to some people who know about these processes. So then I can say, okay, I would have not known to apply for the GI Bill while I was in Afghanistan. And even though I only qualified for 70% at the time, again, it was that conceptual, okay, like this means that I'm on track to get that 100%. This means that I'm on track to get full BAH, yellow ribbon benefits, like the things that come with that 100% note of that GI Bill. That's the critical piece that is more that conceptual of, okay, I can check off these boxes that I know I have to do to be successful in that career field. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think everything you just said there, I'm picking up is it's like that how to eat an elephant, right? It's one bite
Yeah.
at a time. You got to break it down. You got to figure out what the next step is. And we preach that all the time. But what it sounds like what you did is you just did a little bit of research and you like, hey, what's the first step? Who's the first person I can call that probably knows has dealt with this 100 times, right? That veteran organization at the university, they can give me some guidance. And then I'm still the decision maker. I can make the decision one way or the other. I think that's great advice. People just break down what your goal is and figure out what the next step is to take that first step, even while you're active duty still.
And did you work with
100%.
any nonprofits, or was it specifically the veteran organization at the universities that was kind of the main point of contact?
Yeah, for me, it was just that veterans department within. I went, specifically through Miami University and Florida State University. Ended up choosing Florida State University, but both of them, nothing but positive things to say. They were incredible organizations. Both of them were super, super helpful. Again, I've never had a bad experience reaching out to a veterans department at any university. So if anybody's looking to go back to school or use those education benefits, go talk to your ed center at whatever installation you're currently at, or go talk to the university you're interested in attending or that you might tangentially be interested in attending and go talk to them. Like they're all fantastic people who just want to help veterans, and that's their entire job.
And the one thing I'd love to add is on the flip side of that, like it could be an incredible, you might find the person who's going to tell you exactly what to do for the next 2 years and you're going to figure out what your goals are. But also don't take no for an answer. So somebody answers the phone and says, no, you can't do that. Call somebody else. At least get 3 to 5 no's. And I love when I was a commander, I don't know if Griffin remembers me, but it's you don't take no from someone who can't tell you yes. Continue to ask a different person until you find legitimately like the president of the company or whatever.
Yeah, I love the saying, if someone tells you no, it's not that the answer is no, it's just you asked the wrong question, but you also could have asked the wrong person, to Jack's point.
Mhm.
So either ask another question or ask another person and find someone
That,
that
that was
can.
my rule at Graph and Veer range control. It was like,
Nothing against graph range control, great guys, but
yeah, great guys. But it's okay. You're telling me I can't shoot a 50 cal this way, but who can tell me that I can?
Right.
there's some cloud of can't and all over the place. So
Yeah. How do we work towards yes? That's what matters more.
Right,
exactly.
right.
Yeah.
So Adam, continuing your story a little bit. So you went and got your master's,
Yep.
and then now you're in your PhD program. So I don't want to fast forward there, but
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about, I'm assuming you got your master's, which then made you qualified for some of the other programs. And now as you're already in those programs, you can concurrently work on your PhD. Is that kind of the
Yeah,
general
that's
direction of
correct.
things?
So that gets me to a very important point about the GI Bill is it's worth noting, look up what the annual maximum coverage is for tuition on an annual basis with GI Bill coverage. And then look up, so if you are 100% qualified for a GI Bill, you also qualify for the yellow ribbon program if the university you're attending offers the yellow ribbon, program. The GI Bill will cover, don't quote me exactly, but I believe it's right around like $24,000 a year of tuition, which is a lot. Like that covers a large portion of most any public university. You will not reach $24,000 a year. So for me, I was like, okay, that's fantastic. And then I also looked at Florida State and I was like, even if I were to go to above that, they were 100% yellow ribbon program where any tuition that was more expensive than what the GI Bill would cover, the university would cover. So essentially, it guaranteed that no matter what I did, I would not get charged tuition. No matter how many classes I took, no matter what I did. So what I did was at Florida State is I was like, okay, this is a 2-year program for just this master's degree. What if I did this in a year and a half and I also got an additional master's certificate on top of it? And I got that for the exact same price. It just meant that I took a couple extra classes. I double dipped a couple different places on each semester. I took more classes than all my classmates did. And I finished 6 months before everybody else. And I got an additional master's certificate in athletic coaching out of it as well, because I was underneath, like, there was no maximum threshold. So I just expedited that pace. And I still was getting all of that housing allowance on a monthly basis as well, which is a huge difference in that GI Bill. Is you have the online rate, and then you have it's E5 with dependence rate for BAH. You can look up the university's zip code, and then you look that up in that BAH calculator, and it's whatever the E5 with dependence rate is. And so then if you're in person, based on that zip code, you'll get that BAH amount every month, but that's prorated based off the days you're actually enrolled in the program. So let's say that it was $2,000 a month, for example. If I was only enrolled 15 of the 30 days that month, I would only get $1,000 BAH that month. So if you're trying to really plan out finances, you could get super, super specific. So then that's all really important, because then when you're looking at the same thing goes with that prorated, let's say, charging of that being in university. So when I was doing that master's, it took me a year and a half of total time. However, that's not a year and a half of every single day I'm enrolled in the class. So, you might have that 3 week break over Christmas. None of those 21 days are getting charged against you on your GI Bill 36 months, right? So what you can do with that is, when I graduated my master's program, I still have 24.5 months left, even though I'd already been in school for, a year and a half calendar years, right? But for my GI Bill being charged, I was only charged about 12 months total time. So then I was like, okay, well, I'd always also wanted to do a PhD when I got out. And so I was like, well, I can look at this PhD. And if I split that up by days, I built like a whole Excel tracker. And with that Excel tracker, I basically, said, okay, if this semester is this many days, this semester is this many days, here's my BAH amount, here's my tuition amount, and I take classes in this way, here's my GI Bill will run out, like, specifically to the day. And I knew so I graduated my master's in 2021 in December, and I started my PhD in May of 2022. I knew like in February of 2022 exactly when to the day my GI Bill was going to run out, because you just calculate the daily expense of that GI Bill coverage. So I knew that I was like, okay, based on my BAH amount, based on my books stipend, and then based on the tuition coverage that I can get, I can rearrange my class schedule in this way for a 4 year PhD program. And I'm actually making tens of thousands of dollars by doing a PhD, which is absurd. So I'm coming out in the positive. I actually would have lost money if I would not do a PhD, because I'd still have 24 months of coverage of a GI Bill plus the BAH amount, plus the books and fees, all that put together, not even including scholarships. And so then that's where I could go next, of course, is, veterans scholarships that are available, and talk about some foundations I've gotten scholarships from as well. But I mean, it's absolutely incredible what you can do if you really plan out to a T, like, what are these coverage amounts? And then how are those charged against you? And what can you do from a planning standpoint to say, here's exactly how this is going to look 4 years down the road?
Adam, I hate to break it to you, and I doubt you've ever heard this before, but you're a bit of an overachiever.
I've been told it before. Yes.
That's
Yeah,
super impressive, man.
I don't think Griffin, you haven't pursued the GI Bill at all, right?
Nope.
Yeah, and neither
It's
have
well
I.
worth it if you qualify. Please do
Yeah,
it.
my question to you is, are these calculations automatic, or do you kind of have to prod the program to make sure that it doesn't run out early, where you're getting charged for 365 days in a calendar year, but you actually were only enrolled? Did you actively reach out to somebody and say, like, I still have 25 days that I didn't use?
Check my Excel sheet.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, the answer is actually no. Fascinatingly, all of that stuff is automatically calculated. All of that
Wow.
stuff is just day-to-day expense calculators. Like, when we get off this, I'd be happy to share my screen and show you the exact Excel document I'm talking about, because I've updated it every single semester with every additional scholarship I've had. Because then with all of that funding and stuff, I actually also pay for my wife's PhD. She's in a PhD program as well right now. And so, like, we get to kind of dual, like, kind of, financially plan with that stuff. But I mean, all that stuff is automatically calculated, and it should be all available in that public domain, where, let's say, if I'm interested in attending, we'll call it Florida State University. I know Florida State University's fall program starts on August 24th, and I know that their semester ends on December 8th. well, then I can plan out how many days of enrollment that is, and then I can use that days to charge, let's say, whatever my 36-month allotment is for the GI Bill, right? So then you can just basically subtract it off the total days that 36 months is, right?
So just to
Right.
clarify, and maybe this will segue into the scholarships as well, but to use this as the bridge to that conversation. So you have used the one GI Bill, and of course, maybe some VRE and some scholarships and other things, but to pay for a master's for your full PhD and for your wife's. Is that, am I correct in that? I'm sure there's a
If
lot
we're
of pieces
including
of
the
that.
scholarships in that calculation, yes, that's correct.
That is insane. Most people
Yeah.
see one GI Bill, I can go get my MBA or I can get my undergrad or like part of my undergrad really. But you're saying you've gotten three three
Yes.
degrees, advanced
Yeah.
degrees from one.
That's not including the National Guard paying for my undergrad. So I paid no tuition during my undergrad, and that was not GI Bill. That was not any other cover. That was federal tuition assistance, FTA, going through that. And then I worked my tail off to be the top cadet in IU RTC. So I was also getting somewhere around the ballpark of $10,000 a year of scholarship money from IU. And then that paid for all my housing as well while I was going through RTC. So the National Guard was paying for my tuition, and then IU RTC scholarships is essentially paying for all of my like room and board. So.
Man, no, that's incredible. So
I've been very blessed to have the opportunity to pursue a lot of these things, in terms of like financial support. And I mean, again, it comes back down to that. Yeah, it's the whole point of this podcast is you got to make a plan, man.
yeah,
You got to understand what's available to you. You got to make the plan, and then it's the daily execution. That's really all it takes. It doesn't have to be fun. You just have to do it whether you like it or not.
But
yeah,
that's the unfortunate, crazy part about this is these programs are out there. It's just about getting, not to say this in a way, but like getting off your ass and doing the thing, right?
Yeah.
And not to say that it's easy because it's not like nobody's going to do it for you. So what you're a good example of is just somebody who said, "Hey, I know this is out there. Let me see how I can use this most effectively to support my transition to do the things that I want to do." It's amazing. I mean, I wish we could just take your brain and just insert it into every single
Appreciate it. Yeah,
transitioning better.
maybe they'll take a little ounce of his brain from this conversation, and that would
I
be,
certainly hope so.
success for all of us for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, a lot of that stuff was not even my own research. I just booked a conversation with the Veterans Support Agency at the university, and they told me all that information. And then I just was like, all right, well, just go do some calculations. And then just some very basic calculations of, okay, this is the annual calendar. This is what it looks like. Here's so I can charge my tuition. Here's so I can take my classes in such a way that I graduate early. Like all that kind of stuff put together. I mean, people are willing to work with you and people are happy to hear that you want to be successful and like they want to work with you to help you be successful. So it's more about, yeah, go have those conversations with people who are there literally fully to support you.
Outside the box too, in that, it is you just going above and beyond, but those programs are designed, not the master's programs, but a lot of college programs are designed for 18, 19-year-old kids who don't have a ton of drive. So they maybe have a couple classes and it's not overwhelming. And
Exactly.
we transitioning from the military, like you can handle a lot.
Oh
And
yeah.
frankly, if you look at it like a job and you look at it like something like, okay, no, I'm going to actually try to push myself. You got to be careful not to, bite off more than you can chew. But
Right.
at the same time, it sounds like you added to your program to be able to
That's
take
correct.
full advantage of it while you were still getting just charged for one day. You were like, that's a phenomenal way to use it.
Yep. Yeah, so most of my classmates might be in like three classes at a time, and I would be at like, in five. But
Right.
again, it's like you talked about is people might be coming out of, yeah, like just a bachelor's. They haven't gone through freaking Ranger school.
Yeah.
That's always my like reframe is, dude, it's literally not harder than Ranger school. I'm fine. It's so not that complicated. Dude, I slept like 7 hours last night.
And
I
I've eaten
literally have no
today.
room to complain.
Life
Like,
is good, man.
yeah.
Yeah. It's like that paper's due in 45 days. I only
Yeah.
have
Oh
45
no.
days
Yeah, I'm so
paper.
scared. So yeah, that's definitely like the easiest reframe is like, dude, like I ate lunch like an hour ago. I'm good, man.
Yeah.
Right.
So to get to the scholarship conversation, could you
Yeah.
talk about maybe ones I know I've seen your face on the Tillman Scholarship page. So if you could
Yep.
talk through some of the scholarships you found that have been, good options for people. Maybe there's some that are specific to the program you're in, but we'd love to hear maybe what's more
Absolutely.
broadly available for people to look into.
Yeah. So a lot of scholarships you can find out about through going to the university that you're interested in, because a lot of those universities will have veterans specific scholarships that they'll offer to you. There's also a difference between if you're looking for a bachelor's or a master's or a PhD, like there's different tracks that you can go in. Like you could be a teaching assistant, you could be a research assistant, you can go and get, sort of like support through a lot of those types of ways. But then through each of those, there's probably also veterans specific scholarships at whatever university you're trying to attend, right? So that's one that I've always tried to leverage. And then second, there's a lot of other external agencies. So you guys have probably heard of Fulbright scholars, Rhodes scholars, like those people are amazing, but those are options. Don't think that you're not like worthwhile to be one of those people. Like you absolutely can be one of those people, right? So, you brought up the Pat Tillman Foundation. Like the Pat Tillman Foundation is absolutely incredible. They're an amazing foundation. So, you guys are, I assume, familiar with Pat Tillman Foundation, but I'll explain a little bit if anybody's not, is Pat Tillman was a incredible Pro Bowl safety who gave his life, actually left the NFL after 2001, and then gave his life through the serving in the Ranger Battalion back in 2004, in April of 2004. And then basically the NFL and a lot of other agencies, a lot of other professionals essentially flooded Marie Tillman, his wife at the time, with just a lot of money. And she was like, well, what can I do with this? And like, how can I support people that would like make Pat proud? Right. And so then she started the Pat Tillman Foundation. And so with that, she's been empowering, and the Pat Tillman Foundation has been empowering veterans, spouses, and then active service members as well for the last 15-ish years, I believe, since around 2010, I think was the first year of Tillman Scholars, where basically they'll pay for individuals like veterans, spouses, or service members to go and get that next degree. So maybe that's a bachelor's degree, maybe it's a master's, maybe it's a PhD, but all of those levels are all Tillman Scholars. And so they've been naming, depends on the year, but usually 60 Tillman Scholars are named every single year. And I mean, the bios of some of these people just make you feel, like you're not doing enough, right? Like some of these Tillman Scholars are just absolutely incredible. And I'll tell you as well, as I applied to be a Tillman Scholar when I was still active duty in 2020 for my master's program, and I was denied. Like the first time I applied, like I was denied, and I was like, oh yeah, like that probably tracks. I'm probably not good enough. And then I was like, well, let's keep working, And so then I keep working, and then was blessed enough to be named a Tillman Scholar in 2023. But then if you are named a Tillman Scholar, you'll be a part of the foundation for the rest of your life. And it's just like the network of absolutely amazing, like such cool individuals that are in that organization. I mean, I couldn't say enough positive things about it, and like the connections you can make with people. And then of course they give like just amazing like financial support as well. But all that stuff put together, it's just, it's a fantastic agency. But agencies like that exist. And if you're a veteran, like you can find agencies like that, like things that are specific to your career field also that might exist, that are supporting veterans pursuing like medicine, right? There's a separate veterans who are pursuing medical doctorates. Like that's a separate agency that you could also get a scholarship from, And there's so many that are like that. It's just, okay, what do I want to do? And then what scholarships are available? And like an easy way to do that is, again, just contact a veteran agency and be like, hey, are you aware of any other veterans scholarships for me pursuing this career field? And those are always good opportunities to have those conversations.
Just to double click on the Tillman Foundation for a minute. So you applied in 2020, were denied. Did you
Yep.
apply every year after? Was like if someone is not in school for as long as you happen
Yeah.
to be in school, would they not have been able to use that when you finally did get in 3 years later?
It always depends on your personal timeline. With my personal timeline, I didn't apply the next year because I was set to graduate that year. And so I chose not to apply that year because I was like, well, I would only have a semester of coverage. So I was like, let me apply again when I enter the PhD program. You know what I mean? And so I
Okay.
was like, well, so I didn't apply because then I was also like, I hadn't decided on where I was going to do my PhD, and you have to like already have approval from a university for you to be funded. Like you can't just apply and say, oh yeah, I'm going to go to, right now I'm going to Rocky Mountain University of Health Professions. I can't just say, oh, I'm going to go there, but I've never applied and I haven't been accepted. Like you have to already be accepted into that university or have already applied and then be accepted before you're named a Tillman Scholar, right? You already have to be on that track. So I just decided to, okay, I'll finish the master's that second year of the master's, and then let me just apply again when I go into the PhD. So
And
no, not necessarily. It was my second year.
was there something between your first application and then the accepted one that made the difference?
Oh
And
yeah.
maybe that's only applicable for the Tillman Foundation, but I'm assuming it's something that's applicable for every application. Like what made you that much more qualified or marketable?
Yeah, two main things. I went from what I wanted to do to why I wanted to do it. Where when I was describing myself and my desires, my future aspirations, I was talking about like the things I wanted to do and like what I was going to do and like what my career trajectory looked like versus Why am I a strength and conditioning coach and nutritionist for the military? Why do I want that as a career field? And it's because I can make a larger impact on the military as a whole by being in my current position than I could have if I would have stayed in the military. I really genuinely love like seeing people genuinely change their lives for the better. And they will, maybe improve their nutrition, maybe improve their fitness, maybe, win a competition that I put on, but things like that, like it gives people this opportunity to thrive. And that's such a cool why. I love getting up every day. I love attacking my job every single day because of it's the why that I do it. It's not like the what that I'm doing. Like it's not like just the content, right? It's about like why I'm doing it. And I made that switch from the what to the why after having multiple conversations with other Tillman scholars while I was getting ready to apply for my second year. But my first time I applied, I never talked to any Tillman scholars. The second year I applied, I talked to three before I submitted my application who all told me, talk about the why you're doing it, not the what. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. So again, it's what we're currently doing right now is we're talking to people who have lived and done the thing. So the best thing I did to gain, let's say to improve my application was, we'll talk to the people who have been successful doing it. So that's literally what we're doing right now is, yeah, let's have that conversation. So what I did was I went and talked to three separate Tillman scholars, and every single one of them gave me their own advice for how I can improve my application for, the Tillman Scholarship.
Makes a ton of sense.
Yep.
Well, to fast forward a little bit to what you're currently doing now, I through some background research, I saw that you have developed an AI model to individualize training programs and other things. Can you talk about that process, what you've built, what you're working on now, and kind of how you're using AI or other technology to,
Sure.
to create a better experience for those that you train?
Yeah. Yeah, so a couple different ways that I got into that is just basically I've been coaching people as well through like personal training or group training or whatever for quite some time. Even when I was in my bachelor's, I was always trying to train people. I worked at a personal training facility for a while. That's what I've enjoyed doing. But the more I did that kind of stuff, where I would maybe help people online for free or help my buddies and that kind of stuff, I always just thought to myself, so much of this can be automated where the sets from week to week, the weights progressions from week to week, like that kind of stuff can start to be automated if I know like the background information behind it. So I just was like, okay, well, how do I start automating that process? And so if you start writing some formulas inside Excel and then you start to relate these formulas to each other, write a couple algorithms, and basically you do that a lot of times, and then you have this outline of a fitness program that like basically it makes this exact same decisions that I would make if I was live in person with you. So basically that's how I started to automate these programs. And so then I started to publish and utilize these programs, and they were pretty effective because I didn't have to be there in person with the person, during a training session, but it could still have the same, let's say, effect where it could automatically change the distance, automatically change the pace, automatically change the weight on the bar for a squat. And like all those things can start to be automated. And so it allowed with this, me to, let's say, apply that coaching at scale, right? And so it basically was a fun progression. And then there's been a huge, obviously, push with AI nowadays. That's more what's called, so generative pre-trained transformers. It's called GPTs, or like a large language model. There's like a type of that. So, I've done a couple different podcasts about that kind of stuff as well. And I've spoken some conferences about AI because I'm very passionate about AI, but that's a little different than what I personally do with fitness programming. So with fitness programming, I use what's called an expert systems AI approach, which is more like an algorithmic rules engine that creates this sort of progression or regression based off of like questions and answers that I like program into this system, right? But like the overall concept is yes, like general classic, if you've ever used ChatGPT, like that's not what I do for fitness programming. However, let's say utilities such as ChatGPT or Notebook LM or Claude Sonnet or like those other big companies like Grok or X, from XAI, like those kind of things can be useful for sure. And you can make them help you a lot for creating fitness programs, but it's a little bit different than what I personally do and apply. But I mean, I could go for forever about AI, so I don't think we want to go down that rabbit hole.
Well, we don't have to go too deep, but maybe just to stick our toe in, two questions on that vein of thought. One is what you do, I'm assuming it's a better way to go about it, but is what you do accessible for the daily person that's trying to improve their fitness routine or have a more personalized plan? And if not, assuming it's not probably for accessible for everyone, how would you recommend those that don't have that access to use an LLM or a chat GPT type function to improve their own fitness?
Yeah. So the first one is it certainly can be. It all comes back to how I create the model from the first click, if you will, or the first formula. Like you could create a expert system AI model to train any, we'll call it an archetype of person. So that could be your general populations person. That could be someone training for powerlifting. That could be someone training for a 5K. Like there are different agencies. I'll give no personal affiliation with anybody here, but a really great one for fitness would be what's called Evolve AI. That's one for powerlifting specifically. That's just an incredible, has an algorithmic rules engine, and it basically progresses or regresses with you, before the session, during the session, after the session. Like it's a fantastic application of that same theoretical concept, and it'll apply at scale. So there are a lot of companies who are doing that really well, not using that LLM or GPT style approach. It's using that like expert system like approach where it's, these people are creating these algorithmic rules engines, right? And so Evolve AI is a great one. And then, similar, there's what's called machine learning. So if you were like an endurance athlete, you could look up a company called TriDot, TRIDOT. So TriDot, also a great company. They have, I think, Run Dot and Bike Dot as well. I'm not sure if they have a separate Swim Dot or not, but essentially it's using a machine learning system to individualize endurance training to you as well. And so like a lot of those companies already exist, which is awesome. So I would recommend going and seeing those. For me personally, I program most of mine for the military athlete because that's who I work for, right? So most of mine are more directed toward, let's say, this like military widespread functional fitness style approach with, sled pushes and carries and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's a little bit different. But again, that's how it comes back to, well, what's the overall goal of the program? Second, if you were going to use the free version of a large language model or a GPT, the best thing I can say is that the prompt you use is by far and away the most important part of the quality of output you'll receive. So you have to have a very detailed prompt. If I'm going to ask you to be my personal training coach, well, then you're going to need to know how old am I? What's my injury history? What am I training for? Do I have a competition on the calendar? Right? Do I have a, tweaked right shoulder? What's my bench press max? Like those types of things. Like the more information you can give a large language model, the more context it has to feed the system, and then the better it'll individualize that output to you, if that makes sense.
For sure. No, that's really helpful. When you say you're coding this, do you have the technical expertise? Are you physically going in there and tweaking the models that you're using, or like how are you going about the technical part of it?
Yes. Yeah. So I build all that myself. That's again, that was kind of all self-taught through like the years of continuing and coaching and all that kind of stuff. So not like full on, let's say, crazy. Like I'm not by no means a computer scientist, but I do myself. I've learned enough to, be dangerous, I suppose.
Wow. It's impressive, especially for an infantry guy.
I mean, that was honestly the biggest drawback. Yeah, I'm an infantry guy, so it takes me a while. I've got to look at a lot of color photos and picture books and read it like 7 times.
Yeah. No,
All
that's
right.
amazing, man. Sounds like you've got something really special and have a really unique way of training folks and helping soldiers get better at what they're doing.
Yeah, well, I might ask you to help me recruit subjects for my human subject research about to publish for my data collection, my PhD here soon. And it uses an engine that's similar, a very small, like small scale version of it, but it's a concurrent training program where you're doing strength and endurance at the same time. So if you want to give that a share on social media, I'd be happy.
Yeah, man. Well, as we start to wrap up here, Adam, there's a two-part question that we ask every guest. One is one ask, and the second part is a give. So, starting with the ask, what's one way that somebody listening to this could help you or help with what you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing that I'm trying to learn more about right now is, as I finish up my PhD, I've never gone through a deep dive of, let's say, how to be an entrepreneur, if you will, or turn what I do into a business approach, if you will, right? I'm not focused right now on how to run a successful, profitable business, but I do want to do that next year when I'm done with my PhD. And like, I want to transition the time that I'm spending on university for the last 5 years. I want to spend that time kind of pursuing these other business and personal goals. So if anybody has any ideas of, advice for things to listen to, things to read, that kind of stuff as it comes to business, I would love to hear it because I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, man. Well, we've got several organizations that we've talked to and that we have learned about through this podcast and other things that we'll make connections to,
Appreciate it.
along those lines. And then second part, one give. I'll preface this by saying this whole conversation has been fantastic, but the 20 to 30 minutes where we talked about military educational benefits and scholarships that people could pursue, that could literally be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars for someone
Oh,
listening
yeah.
to this episode. So, I mean, that was absolute gold in and of itself. But any advice or words of wisdom you'd offer to somebody that might be listening to this?
Yeah, I think it would be, again, yeah, create the very detailed plan, go through that step-by-step process, eat that elephant one bite at a time, right? And if for, for a give, it would be if anybody thinks that, they want to go back to university and apply to be a Tillman Scholar, please reach out to me. I would love to help you through that application process. It's a very important application process. You have not a lot of words to put forth a very important message of what you're trying to do in the world. And so the better you can refine that, the better that application package will be, and the more likely you'd be to be selected, right? So if anybody wants to go back to university and wants to apply to be a Tillman Scholar, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to you about that application process. I've served on the selection committee for the last 2 years. I plan to continue to be on that committee. So, I can't grade your application if I help you with it, but I can certainly help you with it. So hopefully it's even better, just like other Tillman Scholars did for me.
Awesome. Yeah, resounding message is speak to someone who's been there and done it before because
Yeah.
Hmm.
especially other veterans, other people that are like-minded, going after similar things. I mean, all they want to do is help you get to where you want to go, and they've achieved it before. So you're talking to the top portion that actually made was successful in what they were doing. So really great advice there. Well, thanks again, Adam, for joining us. This has been fantastic. Excited to follow along with what you continue to do, what you continue to build as you go forward. Maybe see how many more degrees you can wrap up underneath the same GI
I
Bill.
only wanted to finish this one and I'm done, I promise.
That's crazy impressive, man. Maybe, I don't know if you have kids, but maybe all your kids can get educated under the same benefits too.
Yeah, exactly. Somehow, yeah, extend the GI Bill even more.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just scheduled or I just signed up for a Spartan race
Yeah.
in August in Hawaii, so it's gonna be
While we were on the show,
no, but
Should have.
Jack's like,
Should
I'm
have.
motivated, man. I'm signed up
Yeah.
right now.
I'm signing
right.
up.
I know. No, but I've put it off. I've gone through the whole thing, and then I get to the end, and I realize how much it costs, and then I never
Yeah.
follow through. And I'm like, I'm not doing this. But I actually pulled the trigger this year, so it'll be fun. But like you said, just a mark on the calendar, for
Is
something
that
to
is that
to
the
train
one
for.
on Oahu?
Yeah.
That one looks incredibly epic.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm super excited. So
Nice.
That's gonna be awesome. Heck
I'm
yeah.
not
Adam,
looking forward to the running, but I love obstacle courses.
Is
So
it that'd be
Jack's
fun?
not
That'll be
someone to
fun.
just wade into the water. He's doing a backflip into this thing. I like it.
Good.
yeah, right. Well, the girls wanted to do it too. So I was like, there's a kids one. So maybe we'll sign them up too.
I
We'll
was gonna say,
see.
if you get
That's gonna be
Palmer to
awesome.
do the half marathon one, you should be
Right.
setting some records.
Right.
Adam, have
Awesome.
you done a Deca fit before? I
Never
know you
done a
mentioned
deck
high
fit, no.
rocks.
Yeah, it's similar to that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, those are ones that I've always seen as would be fun to do.
Yeah.
High rocks
I'll
looks
tell you,
like a
my
great
next
one.
my next competition on the calendar is what's called the Tactical Games.
I've
You
seen
guys heard of
those.
those?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm doing a Tactical Games event in October,
Where is it?
Phoenix, Arizona, for the one I signed
Nice.
up. Yeah. But they host 10 to 15 regionals throughout the year, and then they do nationals in November. So I'm doing the regionals event in Phoenix, Arizona in October. But that'll be fun. It's like shooting and fitness. It's kind of like the civilian, way easier than Best Ranger, but kind of like the civilian version of that, where you like, fitness matters and shooting matters. So
That's awesome.
Nice.
it's a lot of fun. It's just a two gun too, so there's no shotgun, which is silly anyways. But it's just a rifle pistol put together. So rifle pistol and then a lot of fitness. And honestly, the physical standards are insane. They're very challenging for the men's elite division.
Hmm.
They're cool. Yeah, I'd recommend looking it up.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, again, thanks for taking the time to talk with us. This has
Yeah.
been a great conversation, and I'll pass it back your way for any parting thoughts, the last piece of wisdom for someone that's currently transitioning or considering going down that road.
Yeah, the last thing I might say would just be I was blessed enough to be in a financial position where I could be a full-time student in my master's degree. And then now I'm a full-time employee while I'm going through the PhD. So both can certainly be done because I couldn't stay as a full-time student. That wouldn't have made sense monetarily speaking. But what I would recommend is people go and try to find maybe like other positions. One of the things that is fantastic about being a veteran is that you get priority for jobs posted on USA Jobs. So if you want to go and work for the military, there are like at least, I don't even know the percentage, but I think like half are open to veterans only, where it's like veterans are people who are already in the DoD only. So like you qualify for these types of positions. So if you want to work through those types of things, go and work at the VA department. Go and work at like your local VA clinic and you'll be prioritized to work there. And so you can certainly work through, if you did want to get that degree and you were like, I can't be a student, for sure you can still go and get these other like roles and opportunities that you'll get priority hiring for. And then you can work through that entire time as you're going through that program. So I understand and recognize that I was blessed to be in that position as I'm going through that program, but it's less about that. It's also, like it can certainly be done and working while you're doing that degree as well. And like you could for sure do both. Again, it just comes down to use the discipline and work ethic that you learned while you were in the military, apply that in the civilian world, and you'll do a lot better than everybody else.
100%. Well said, man. Well, thanks again.
Like,
We'll
yeah,
let you get back to it.
thanks,
I'm
man.
sure you've got a leisurely marathon to run this afternoon. So
No, nothing crazy.
enjoy.
It's been 3 days since that 50, so I'm tapping out for a little bit.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Veteran Ventures podcast. If you heard something interesting or found the show to be helpful, send it to a friend who is transitioning out of the military or considering a transition. We'd also really appreciate if you left a rating and review of the show. That helps us reach more people with these amazing stories of successful veterans. We'll catch you next time on the Veteran Ventures podcast. And until then, go do the thing. Make that decision, have that conversation, and go find your next mission.